You have been lied to. Not by accident, not by mistake, deliberately, systematically, by the people you trust most with your money. Your bank, your financial advisor, your parents, your teachers. Every single one of them has repeated the same myths. And those myths are designed to keep you poor while making someone else rich. Here is the truth nobody wants you to know. Saving money makes you poorer. Buying a house is not an investment. Your 401k is a trap. Debt is not always bad. And working hard will not make you wealthy. Everything you were taught about money is either outdated, incomplete, or an outright lie. And if you keep believing these myths, you will work for 40 years, retire broke, and die wondering what went wrong. Right now, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. The median retirement savings for people age 55 to 64 is $120,000. That is not enough to survive 5 years. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed to extract wealth from you and concentrate it at the top. And the myths you believe are the mechanism that makes it all possible. The question is not whether you have been lied to. The question is whether you are ready to hear the truth. Before we shatter every financial myth you have ever believed, hit that subscribe button and join the Wealth Forum. We expose the lies that keep you poor and the systems that keep you trapped. Turn on notifications, because what comes next will fundamentally change how you see money forever. Now let's talk about where these myths come from and why they are so dangerous. Let's go back to 1950, post-war America. The economy is booming. A single income can support an entire family. You can buy a house for 2 times your annual salary. You can retire on a pension. And if you work hard and save your money, you build wealth. This was real. This actually worked. And this is where all the financial advice you still hear today comes from. But here is what nobody tells you. That world is gone. Completely, irreversibly, dead. In 1950, the average home cost $7,400. The median income was $3,300. That is a 2.2 to 1 ratio. Today, the median home costs $430,000. The median income is $75,000. That is a 5.7 to 1 ratio. Housing is nearly 3 times more expensive relative to income than it was in 1950. The math that worked for your grandparents does not work for you. In 1950, pensions were standard. Companies took care of you for life after you retired. Today, only 15% of private sector workers have a pension. 15%. Everyone else has been pushed into 401ks and IRAs. Retirement risk has been transferred from corporations to individuals. You are now responsible for funding your own retirement in a system designed to make that nearly impossible. In 1950, the top marginal tax rate was 91%. The wealthy paid their share. Today it is 37%, and most billionaires pay far less through capital gains loopholes. The tax burden has shifted downward. The middle class now carries the weight, while the rich get richer on investments, taxed at 15 to 20%. In 1950, union membership was 35%. Workers had bargaining power. Today it is 10%. Wages have stagnated for 50 years, while productivity has increased 77%. You are producing more value than ever, but you are getting paid the same. And all that extra value is going to shareholders and executives. The financial advice that worked in 1950, save money, buy a house, work hard, retire on a pension, was built for a completely different economic reality. That reality no longer exists, but the myths persist. And every time you follow outdated advice in a modern economy, you fall further behind. Now let's talk about the myths themselves, the specific lies that destroy wealth, and why they are still being taught, despite overwhelming evidence that they no longer work. Myth number 1 is save your money. This is the most dangerous lie of all, because it sounds responsible. It sounds smart, and it is killing your wealth. Here is why. Inflation is currently running at 4 to 5% per year. Your savings account pays 0.5% interest, maybe 1% if you shop around. That means every year, your money loses 3 to 4% of its purchasing power. You are getting poorer by saving. Let's do the math. You save $10,000 in a high-yield savings account at 1% interest. After 1 year, you have $10,100, but inflation was 4%. The purchasing power of that $10,100 is now equivalent to $9,696. You saved money and lost $304 in real value. This happens every single year. Compounded over decades, saving cash is financial suicide. But here is the deeper problem. The advice to save comes from an era when interest rates were high and inflation was low. In 1980, you could get a 15% return on a savings account, while inflation was 13%. Saving actually made you richer. Today, the relationship is inverted. Inflation is higher than interest rates. Saving makes you poorer, but nobody updated the advice. Myth number 2 is your home is your best investment. This is a lie sold to you by real estate agents, banks, and the entire housing industrial complex. Your primary residence is not an investment. It is a liability dressed up as an asset. Here is why. When you buy a house, you pay property taxes, you pay maintenance, you pay insurance, you pay interest on the mortgage. All of these costs eat into any appreciation, and most people never calculate the true cost of ownership. Let's use a real example. You buy a $400,000 house with a 30-year mortgage at 6% interest. Over 30 years, you will pay $463,000 in interest alone. Add property taxes at $4,000 per year for 30 years, and that is another $120,000. Add maintenance at 1% of home value per year, and that is $120,000 more. Your total cost of ownership is $103,000 for a house you paid a $400,000 for. Even if the house appreciates to $800,000, you are barely breaking even after costs. Compare that to renting for $2,000 per month and investing the difference. Your monthly mortgage payment on that $400,000 house is around $2,400. If you rent for $2, you are zero and invest the $400 difference, plus the money you did not spend on down payment, property taxes, and maintenance. You end up wealthier in 30 years, but nobody tells you this. Because the system profits from home ownership. Banks make money on mortgages, real estate agents make commissions, and the government collects property taxes forever. Myth number 3 is your 401k will secure your retirement. This is the biggest scam in modern finance. Here is how it actually works. You contribute to a 401k. Your employer might match a small percentage. That money goes into mutual funds chosen by your employer. Those funds charge fees, management fees, expense ratios, trading costs. On average, these fees total 1 to 2% per year. That might not sound like much, but compounded over 40 years, fees will eat 30 to 40% of your total returns. And here is the kicker. You do not control when you can access that money. You cannot withdraw before 59.5 without a penalty. You are forced to start withdrawing at 73, whether you need the money or not. And every dollar you withdraw is taxed as ordinary income. You pay taxes when you earn the money, and you pay taxes again when you withdraw it. The 401k is not a retirement plan. It is a deferred tax trap that benefits fund managers and the government, while limiting your control and eating your returns. Myth number 4 is debt is bad. This is half true. Consumer debt is bad. Credit card debt at 22% interest is financial poison. But productive debt is different. Productive debt is borrowing money to acquire assets that generate income or appreciate in value. Real estate investors use debt to buy rental properties that produce cash flow. Corporations use debt to expand and increase profits. The wealthy use debt strategically to build wealth, faster than they ever could with cash alone. Here is the secret. If you can borrow money at 5% and invest it in something that returns 10%, you are making 5% on someone else's money. That is leverage. That is how wealth is actually built. But instead of teaching you how to use debt strategically, the system teaches you to fear all debt. Why? Because if you understood leverage, you would compete with the people who already have it. Myth number 5 is work hard and you will get rich. This is the cruelest lie of all, because it makes poverty feel like a moral failure. If you are poor, you must not be working hard enough. But the data says otherwise. The correlation between hours worked and wealth is almost zero. The people who work the hardest, retail workers, manual laborers, service industry employees, are among the poorest. The people who work the least, investors, executives, trust fund recipients, are the wealthiest. Wealth is not built by working hard. Wealth is built by owning assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, intellectual property. These are things that generate income whether you work or not. The entire system is designed to keep you working for wages while the ownership class collects returns on assets. And as long as you believe hard work equals wealth, you will never question why you are working 60 hours a week and still broke. These 5 myths. Save your money. Your home is an investment. Your 401k is secure. Debt is bad. Work hard and get rich are the foundation of middle-class financial destruction. They keep you poor. They keep you working. They keep you trapped. And they are taught to you from childhood. Because a population that understands money is a population that cannot be controlled. Now let's talk about the crisis. The moment when these myths collapse, and millions of people realize they have been lied to their entire lives. Here is the breaking point. Retirement. The moment when all these myths are put to the test. And for most Americans, that is when everything falls apart. The median retirement savings for someone aged 65 is $200,000. Let's be generous and say you saved $300,000. Financial advisors tell you to withdraw 4% per year to make it last. That is $12,000 per year, $1,000 per month. You cannot survive on $1,000 per month, not even close. So what do? You go back to work. At 70, at 75, you work until you physically cannot anymore. And this is called retirement. But it gets worse. That $300,000 is mostly in a 401k, which means every dollar you withdraw is taxed as ordinary income. Let's say your tax rate is 20%. Now your $12,000 per year becomes $9,600, $800 per month, and inflation is still eating 4% per year. Your purchasing power declines every single year. You are watching your savings evaporate in real time. Meanwhile, housing costs are rising. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Medicare does not cover everything. Long-term care costs $100,000 per year. One major medical event and your $300,000 is gone. You spent 40 years saving. You did everything right. You followed all the advice, and you end up broke anyway. This is not a hypothetical. This is happening to millions of retirees right now, and it is going to get worse. Social Security is projected to run out of funds. By 2034, when that happens, benefits will be cut by 23%. If you are relying on Social Security to supplement your retirement, you are about to lose a quarter of that income. The system you paid into your entire life is going to fail you right when you need it most. And here is the part that should terrify you. The myths are still being taught. Financial advisors are still telling 25-year-olds to max out their 401k. Banks are still pushing homeownership as the American dream. Parents are still telling their kids to work hard and save money. The lies continue. The wealth destruction continues, and another generation is being set up to fail. But the breaking point is not just retirement. It is also homeownership. The myth that buying a house builds wealth is crashing into reality. In 2024, the average mortgage rate hit 7%. At that rate, a $400,000 house costs $2,761 per month just for the mortgage. Add property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, and you are paying $3,500 per month to own a home. Most people cannot afford that. So what happens? They rent forever. They are told homeownership is the key to wealth, but they are locked out of the market because prices have risen faster than wages for 40 years. And the people who did buy homes, many of them are house poor. All their money goes to the mortgage. They cannot invest. They cannot save. They cannot build wealth anywhere else. Their entire net worth is tied up in a single, illiquid asset that might appreciate or might crash depending on the market. This is not wealth building. This is financial fragility. The 401k crisis is even worse. In 2022, the average 401k lost 20% of its value when the stock market crashed. People who were about to retire saw their life savings cut by a fifth in a matter of months, and they had no control. They could not pull out. They could not hedge. They just had to watch their retirement disappear. This is what happens when you surrender control of your money to fund managers and hope for the best. The crisis is not coming. The crisis is here. Millions of Americans are realizing the myths do not work. They saved. They bought a house. They contributed to a 401k. They worked hard. And they are still broke. The cognitive dissonance is shattering because the myths promise security and the reality delivered poverty. This is the turning point. The moment when people start asking the dangerous question, if everything I was taught is wrong, what is the truth? And once you ask that question, you can never go back. Now let's talk about the consequences. What happens when an entire generation realizes they have been lied to? And what does it mean for the future of wealth in America? Here is what happens when the myths collapse. First, trust evaporates. People stop listening to financial advisors. They stop trusting banks. They stop believing the system works in their favor. And when trust disappears, the entire financial services industry loses its power. This is already happening. Younger generations are abandoning traditional financial advice. They are turning to alternative assets, crypto, NFTs, meme stocks. Why? Because they already know the traditional path leads nowhere. Second, behavior changes. If saving makes you poorer, people stop saving. They spend, they consume, they live for today because the promise of tomorrow has been broken. The savings rate in America has dropped to 3.9%, the lowest in decades. People are not financially irresponsible. They are responding rationally to a system that punishes savers and rewards spenders. Third, the retirement crisis explodes. By 2030, 75 million baby boomers will be retired or retiring. Most of them do not have enough saved. They will rely on Social Security. But Social Security is going broke. The strain on the system will be catastrophic. Medicare costs will skyrocket. Medicaid will be overwhelmed. And younger generations will be forced to pay higher taxes to support a system that will not be there when they retire. Fourth, wealth inequality accelerates. The people who understand the truth that wealth comes from assets, not wages, will get richer. The people who still believe the myths will get poorer. The gap will widen, social mobility will collapse, and the American dream will officially die. This is not speculation. The data already shows it. Upward mobility has fallen by 50% since 1980. If you are born poor today, you stay poor. Fifth, political instability rises. When people realize the system is rigged, they demand change. Sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently. History shows us what happens when wealth inequality reaches extreme levels. Revolutions, upheaval, collapse. We are not there yet, but the trajectory is clear. And every year the myths persist. We get closer to the breaking point. And here is the most unsettling consequence. The myths serve a purpose. They keep you working. They keep you docile. They keep you from asking why the system is designed this way. If you believe hard work leads to wealth, you will never question why you are working 60 hours a week for someone else's profit. If you believe your 401k is secure, you will never demand control over your retirement. If you believe saving is responsible, you will never invest in assets that actually grow wealth. The myths are not accidents. They are tools of control, and the people who benefit from them will never stop teaching them. Because the moment you stop believing, the moment you start asking questions, the moment you demand a different system, that is when their power ends. So here is the lesson. Everything you were taught about money is designed to keep you poor. Saving makes you poorer in an inflationary economy. Your home is a liability, not an investment. Your 401k is a fee trap that benefits everyone except you. Debt is a tool that the rich use and the poor fear. And working hard will never make you wealthy because wealth is built by owning assets, not selling hours. The people who get rich understand this. They do not save cash. They invest in assets that appreciate. They use debt strategically to leverage other people's money. They minimize taxes through legal loopholes. They own businesses, real estate, stocks, and intellectual property. They build systems that generate income whether they work or not. And they never ever follow the advice they give to everyone else. The question is not whether the myths are lies. The question is what you do now that you know the truth. Because knowledge without action is worthless. You can understand every word of this video and still end up broke if you do not change your behavior. So here is what you do. If this video shattered the way you think about money, if it made you realize that the financial advice you have been following is designed to keep you poor, then smash that like button, subscribe to the Wealth Forum, turn on notifications, share this with anyone still chasing the American dream with outdated myths. Because the next video breaks down exactly how to build real wealth in the modern economy, the strategies the rich actually use, and you do not want to miss it. But before you go, leave a comment. Tell me this. Which myth did you believe the longest? And what finally made you realize it was a lie? Because I want to know what broke the spell for you. The myths will keep destroying wealth as long as people keep believing them. The only way out is the truth.